friends. Gold has gone mainstream. You're seeing it everywhere, and prices keep climbing. But how do you actually take advantage of it? How do you invest in a way that's safe, simple, and built for the long run? That's where Noble Gold Investments comes in. Noble Gold specialists are trained to help investors like you go from confused to confident. Whether you're looking for a gold IRA or you want physical coins and bars delivered right to your home, Noble Gold makes the process simple, safe, and stress-free. You'll get step-by-step guidance from a team that's handled over 2.5 billion in precious metal transactions. With Noble Gold Investments, protecting and growing your wealth isn't just their job, it's their commitment. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com today to claim your free wealth protection kit. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Noble Gold, helping you build a stronger future. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Friday, October 24th, 2025, and we are going out of the matrix into prime reality. It's good to see you all on X, Rumble, and YouTube in a live chat. I see our moderator, Raymond, aka Two Steps Behind, is here. And of course, my wonderful wife, Christine, as inspired in a live chat. I'm excited most of the time. Sometimes people think that I might be too critical, too harsh sometimes, but truly I am excited about the times that we live in. One of the things that is so incredible is that literally millions of people are beginning to realize how much unseen reality there actually is, how much of things, it's not just that they were hidden, but that we couldn't see them before. And this isn't symbolic. When you look at mainstream science, right, and even non-mainstream science sort of confirms this. It's quite unbelievable. If you think about what the world's fights, wars, quarrels, and conversations and arguments are really over all the time are about the things that we see and see differently, right? And some person says it should be this way, the other says this should be that way, but it's all about sort of like rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic. We're just pushing and pulling things around in this reality, thinking that we see everything there is to see. Now, let me repeat that. We truly think we see everything there is to see, and that's what we base our judgments on. Well, let me show you what mainstream and non-mainstream science is actually showing us, okay? Let me see where I can find this. There it is. No, there it's not. There it is, okay? So this is the reality. This is the truth, folks. We see as humans about 0.00000000001% of the light of the spectrum that is out there. And we hear about 0.002% of the audible spectrum that's out there, of what there could be to hear. That virtually in any, under any definition makes us blind and deaf. Blind and deaf. And so this is how we're arguing reality. We're arguing it from pure perspective of interpreting our physical senses and interpreting what we see and how we see it. And then, you take into account that our perceptions, our programs, our backgrounds, our cultures, our ethnicities, our religions, they taint even that tiny, tiny, tiny minutia of what we see and hear, and oftentimes perverted or inverted. So we're blind and deaf. But what is happening is that millions of people, because they have studied things and because it leads them to the same conclusion, that what we can see and what we can hear and what we can know based on our senses is so tiny, and they step within. They develop something that's called inner sight. And inner sight really is stepping inward. We call it inward. It's because we need to point directions to figure things out. We need to point here to say inward. But that's, that's just, again, interpreting what we can see. But what that means is that we stop just observing outside reality, but we start going within. What do we see in our mind's eyes so often? What do we see in visions and dreams? Way more. Who hasn't experienced a dream that didn't match what is realistic in our world, that where you could either fly or saw different colors or heard different sounds, or you could jump between worlds or times or spaces? And yeah, well, what we experience there is a broader spectrum of reality, because we're not bound to our physical senses, which have been artificially, I would argue, artificially limited. It's like we have artificial limiters that were put in there. Why? Because we wouldn't do any of the things that we do. We wouldn't um, participate in any of the world's programs. We wouldn't try to cheat each other and fraud each other and lie to each other if we could see a bigger spectrum of what is. And this turning inward literally causes people to completely change their lives. And if you look at what teachers from previous epochs have done and shown, they when they spoke, and some of them are still around, when they speak, you can tell that they're not speaking about the world of the seen. When they tell people what there truly is, they're not speaking about the world of the seen, the world of the senses. And it repels everyone who is addicted to this egotistical sense worldview, and it attracts everyone that can sense more. Children can sense way more because they're in a different brainwave state and still have access to what some people call the third eye or the inner eye or the pineal gland, or there's various perspectives on this. But we're basically, if we look at, and I never want to, give the impression that I have a sort of a nihilistic or a pessimistic view about the present or the future. But if we truly want to change things, we can't just rearrange the deck chairs of the Titanic, like I said. And what current solution makers, leaders in the mainstream space are suggesting is that we push and pull a few things around. That's going to make it better. But we first have to incorporate the realities that we currently can only see inwardly. The problem is that most people don't validate that. They don't think it's a valid perspective, because why? Because not everyone can see it at the same time. So while people will call on eyewitnesses in court and say, "Did you see that with your own eyes?" Yes. But when the person says, "But I sensed something more, I could feel something more, I could see the whatever intention of that person," everybody says, "Whoa, whoa, 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 we can't do that. You don't know that. That's just make believe." But we have to mature in such ways that we can incorporate these truths into our reality and how we interact with each other. And that's really what if you want to know what the cutting edge of humanity is, it's most certainly not AI. AI is once again a mimicking tool that will and wants to distract us. And I know there's going to be a ton of people, as always, in the comments, like AI is super and only how you use it matters. And we don't need it. That's what I'm saying is, listen, what we're dealing with is we see 1/10 of a trillionth of the spectrum of light. Did I say that right? Let me read that again. I wrote it down. Less than a 10 trillionth of light is what we see. So shouldn't we maybe first work on developing our inner faculties, work on tuning in and actually, expanding our consciousness before we tap into all this technological nonsense? This is what I'm saying is that there are enough people now who are maturing in that sense, you know? It used to be so few people that were willing to do that, but now people are, you know, they're tuning within, they're meditating, they're starting to see auras, you know? People are starting to see auras around other people. Um, you know, they're oftentimes hearing things that most others can't, and you know, they're enjoying it. More and more people are starting to receive images and visions of things that they haven't seen before, that seem so different, you know, so much richer than our current reality. And while of course there are manipulations and, you know, and mind control tools and everything, I think we can even rise above beyond those, and really focus on what we can see in those other dimensions, in those inner realities. So I think that the future conversations that are going to be most exhilarating, most exciting, most expanding will be around the unseen realities, will be around consciousness, and how consciousness as a, you know, consciously regained tool, as something that we consciously have control over again, we are aware of it again, it will allow us to tap into these spectrums. It will allow us to realize the plasma universe and what that actually means. So the conversations in the next years in our communities, I believe, will become increasingly exciting and will open completely new doors of understanding. And I mean this. The word understanding, to stand under something, that's going to probably disappear. We're going to go into inner standing. And I predict that when people of a certain level of consciousness with a shared intention will be in the same space together, uh, it will be more often than not the case that they will see things from beyond the current visible spectrum of light for our eyes, and they will all see that same thing. It will be their level of consciousness and their intention and their expanded inner vision that will allow them to see it. And so part of that is that when people ask me how I envision future communities that aren't part of the mainstream, that are self-sufficient, self-reliant, is I think we will work with energies and potentials that the rest of the world that is solely tuned into their physical senses will not be able to see or perceive, and we will, on the other hand, just work with them just very normally. It's kind of like energetic healing, you know. In many mainstream communities, that is still such a woo woo concept that if somebody doesn't even lay their hands on someone else, but just manipulates energy with their consent, I shall say, manipulates their energy in a positive way, all of a sudden pains go away, restrictions in movements go away. You know, it energetic healing. It's might not be a big thing for you, but if you go into any mainstream hospital setting, these things are very woo woo and strange and mostly not accepted. What I'm saying is that in our communities, this has become fairly normal. Like I could, you know, I could tell you that in our community of friends and acquaintances and people that we regularly communicate with, no one would, you know, think twice if I said, hey, you know, if you allow me lay down, let me work on you for a little bit, or vice versa. That has become normal again. So we're already incorporating some of these things, but it's going to be way more than that. It's going to be exponentially more. And to a certain degree, because we will regain abilities to manipulate energy. And manipulation is not necessarily a bad or a good thing. It's just a thing. How we use it depends on us. But when we remember how to do these things again, it will actually also give us a natural shield of protection, if you will, a layer, because it will not be understood by others. and those who come with ill intentions or wish to harm will suffer those consequences at their own hand, but because of what we created. There's also this unknown shield, for example, and this is a beautiful thing that's spoken about in the Ringing Cedars books, the Ringing Cedars of Russia, where it's explained that when you create your own space of love in nature, meaning gardens, and have a space where every plant knows you, where you it knows you since it was a seed, and it is basically, it's growing for you, for your benefit, for your nutrition, for your healing, and which most people don't know, for your protection. Can you imagine that plants, a space, a natural space, and including some animals that are in there, are actually your most potent protection shield against ill intentions and ill energies? That this can actually be a protective shield. And then that's when people ask me, well, what do we do about chemtrails, geoengineering, which this subject finally is going mainstream too. But again, even that isn't something that is uh, sort of all powerful. There are ways, mitigation ways, that are in the unseen realm that can shield and protect us from it, and we can direct those energies accordingly. This is what the exciting future for us is really about. It's discovering everything that's in the unseen, including other dimensions, beings in those dimensions, how we travel through them, how we go back and forth. Those things are really, really exciting, actually. And I believe were once part of our everyday experience. What is extremely frustrating, boring to a certain degree, and leads nowhere is if we continue to argue and push around the dense aspects of physical reality as it is defined in the 3D. Nothing that we perceive as matter started as matter. Everything started as thought and energy and slowed down into a denser form that we perceive as matter. Nothing started there, nothing whatsoever. So when we just use these dense expressions of slowed down energies as our weapons and shields and arguments, we'll never move forward. So and that's the stepping forward part, is really expanding, right? Raising our consciousness and expanding it, so we're then integrating literally a greater spectrum of experience. So what I'm saying is, what if we could remove only one zero from this equation here that I showed, or from this percentage here that I showed earlier, from this here? What if we could remove one zero, and then we could remove a zero from the audible spectrum? I imagine what that would be. And this is what I think people are doing, that are redeveloping their inner sight, and then can see, for example, the aura around a person, is they're removing those zeros, which is incredible, right? It's incredible to think that. And to be able to do that, we must overcome all of these petty, idiotic, and sort of stupid uh divisions, that under whose spell we are. We're under the spell of those fake divisions. And like I always say, the only reason being is so that we don't discover the truth and the importance of the things that we talk about here. So, when somebody tells me that the solution to a problem is to send more missiles somewhere, or to throw a bigger bomb, or, to put more troops somewhere and fight harder, and it's like, yeah, well, we've been doing that for God knows how long, right? I mean, since time immemorial. What is that exactly improved? How did we evolve? You look at the world today, never has more money been spent on better ways to annihilate and destroy each other. We're the only species that does that, by the way. No other species focuses so much on that. we're also the only species that trains other species to kill our own species, like when we do with dogs, like when we train dogs to kill other people. That's unheard of. That's probably if there are if there were evolved visitors from other um galaxies, and they would look for a measure of maturity. Maybe that would be one. Is this species still training other species to kill its own species? Species. Yeah, uh, its own kind. You know, so the conversation simply needs to evolve beyond that which our eyes can currently see, and beyond that which our ears can currently hear. And that to me is exciting. That's the part where when you have a glimpse into that, and sometimes it can happen, you just being still, you just being quiet, you just being very in a state of non-resistance, in a state of allowing, where you don't hold on to a thought or to a pattern of thoughts, or you don't have to control the situation. And that flow sometimes gives you an experience like that. But more often than not, it's a conscious practice, right? And think about it too. Where do our visions and dreams come from? How can we perceive ourselves to be living something, either a different life, more more opportunities, more abundance, whatever it is that people envision? Where would that vision come from if we have never experienced it in this life? What is the part of us that can tap into a vision like that? How can we see it in our with our mind's eye? What is it that we're seeing? What is it that we're sensing and feeling? It's not what we can touch, it's not what we can see, it's not what we can hear. Clearly not. It's something way beyond that. And if we can do that, we can also live that. We can also embody that. And this is the level of joy and excitement, and when I see people do it, when people, come to us and tell us their stories of how they did this or that, it's always the same thing as, once I could see it, once I could see the vision, I knew I could bring it about. I knew I could sync up with it. And that's just a tiny spectrum. I think we're only really scratching the surface. So, these are the things that excite me. And then, lately, if you've been following Frank Jacobs' work, and we talked about it in the last show, all of this ties into the plasma universe, and how the substance, and maybe it is, not maybe, but certainly is directly tied to consciousness, and intertwined with consciousness is, that everything around us, in us, inside us, all around us is plasma. And what this mystical substance, if we can call it that, actually is, how it operates, how it expresses. A fascinating, fascinating subject that we're only uh, scratching the surface of. And here's what this actually means. What I'm saying is, we're slowly but surely, at least a minority of people, we're beginning to truly shift our baseline reality, where, what we were taught in school about our baseline reality was based on Newtonian physics, and what was discovered allegedly and supposedly in the last few hundred years, with the forces that we find ourselves, that are around us. And the Newtonian physics is the basis for the reality that we live in, and how we interpret it. But that doesn't mean that Newtonian physics is actually the truth. It just means that's what our paradigm's built on. So when we go beyond those physics, and there's quantum physics and the study of plasma, and other modalities that are all just ways for us to express, there's more, there's more, there's more, there's more, there's more to know. But once we go beyond and say, well, those physics are just a teeny tiny part of the truth, but there's so much more. Eventually, we have to shift our baseline paradigm. Like, what is our baseline reality built on? And this is a shift in our thinking. It's a maturity step in our evolution. It's a maturation into higher realms of thinking and creating, because there's more truth in us now. We have more access to truth because of our expansion. This is the excitement part. It's not just about, what's government going to look like in 10 years if it exists, or what's the monetary. Those are all systems that are tied to the old paradigm. And we are, at least a critical mass, beginning to transcend those paradigms in our thinking. And that's where real excitement is coming from. And the forces that be, um, I believe, have a very, very hard time when we go into those spheres. That's where we go into realms and realities that, uh, because of their invertedness, that's just my opinion, because of their inverted consciousness and lower frequency spectrum, um, we become uncontrollable, right, to them completely. Because how would we be bound in fear? Like, think about the consequences of what it means when we see more, hear more, feel more, heal more, have access to greater modalities of co-creation, where actually becomes faster, because we now know what to do, how to do it, when to do it, right? We now know how to manipulate reality, and once again, manipulate not in a bad sense, but just we know how to tap into it much faster. We know how to change things faster, shift things faster. Well, that's great for us, but not very good for an external centralized control system. And that's why I'm one of those people, or Christine and I are, and there's a few of us out there who do not really fear the fact that there will be a reality unfolding that's tied into this dystopian AI digital crap system, and that will be a reality for a large uh, portion of the population. And at the same time, that will not be our reality at all. There will be a completely different one, and we're not afraid of any clashes or overpowering, because I believe we're about to sort of uncover, unleash, rediscover, and live things that um, that will protect us in some sense as well, in a beautiful way. So this is sort of a few thoughts I wanted to share about the unseen realities. And it's very it's very I don't want to say I know this. Knowing is a big word, to know something, but this is what I'm sensing intuitively. This is what I'm beginning to see more and more. I see the conversation shifting, and it is sort of a it's a threshold. There's a threshold. When that threshold is passed, you can no longer see the world in the same way you saw it before. you know you can no longer fear the things that you feared before, because they become unreal to you, because they're not real. They were never real, but you believe them to be real. And so this is the excitement part, is when we shift our beliefs, when we shift our perceptions of ourselves, when we shift how we think about ourselves, we shift how we think about the world, and we shift what we experience in the world and how we experience ourselves. And to the world, you will still look like the same person. You still have skin and eyes and nose and whatnot, but you are so much more now. And that's not in an egotistical sense. You've just transcended certain limitations, which, as Greg Braden says so beautifully, means to live our divinity is to transcend perceived limitations. Yeah, it's an incredible journey, folks. It's an exciting journey. And that's why we also say, think twice, think thrice, think a lot before you give in to systems and control mechanisms that limit you in this experience, that give you sort of a container all of a sudden, a beginning and an end to what you may and may not be, perceive, and do. Be Just think about it. You know, if you're harsh, you say, "This is the hill I'm willing to die on, this digital control system." But if we speak a little more metaphysically, maybe it's the hill our ego is willing to die on. Maybe it's the hill where our ego is finally saying goodbye, and where a bigger part of us comes in and says, "Goodbye, ego, you're not running the show anymore. You can go way back there. You can sit way in the back. There is a seat for you because you serve a purpose, but it's much, much smaller." And where we go, "Okay, we're not having this." This is to me what maybe the hill we're willing to die on actually means. It's the hill where we're allowing old limitations, perceptions, and thoughts to finally dissipate, transcend, transmute into something bigger. And this is a conversation that, for all intents and purposes, if I had this in any mainstream setting, people would just call me completely nuts and crazy. What are you talking about? But we now have communities all over the world. You feel this language, you can sense its truth because you resonate with it, and it's your language that you were thinking in too, that you were already sensing. And this is what we've built together. We built with others in the world. We've built such thought forms now, and they're manifesting literally. So it's a beauty of our time. Well, with that, folks, if you have any questions, and it can be related to this or anything, Christine and I thought we'd open up uh, the stage here for a little bit of a Q&A. All caps, please. If you have a question, put it in all caps, and we'll just display it here on the screen. There we go. Number one, Alyssa Taylor. Some say positive AI will be on positive timeline. Your thoughts? Okay, so I don't want to be black and white about this, or AI has been around much longer than we think we know. It's been even embedded into our system for much longer, but I wouldn't call it artificial intelligence. It's mimetic intelligence. It just mimics, right? It's not artificial. It doesn't just randomly originate from some artificial place. It mimics us. So to the degree that it can simplify some systemic things that we don't want to do anyway anymore. I would say, let's say accounting. Who wants to do accounting? Like, who wants to give their lifetime to ultimately meaningless, ink and white paper, and just shuffle things around? Accounting can have meaning, if you run an operation, sure. But I'm talking about, reporting to IRS and all these things. So yeah, sure, we can think about some things like that. However, AI is so quickly, rather than becoming a crutch to lean on at sometimes, or a helper, it's replacing things. And this is why, think about it too. Those of us who grew up still doing math in our heads and having to do it and having to stand there and multiply and divide and add and whatnot, it's unfathomable that there's a generation now who can't do the simplest calculation without typing it in. But it's not that they're lazy, it's that never fully developed that ability, and now their brain, it's called atrophy. It's when an ability that your brain has is not being used any longer, and the brain just shuts down that part. It doesn't need it any longer. And we could only, speculate how many parts are already shut down because we haven't used them. So with AI, that's such a big thing because it is so, compared to previous generations of technology, it's so all encompassing. It completely takes a task and does it for you. What that does is it helps us so quickly to forget how to do it. And everything that we forget how to do, but still will need to do in the future as a species, because it's essential, from growing food to having clean water and shelter and all of these necessities, when AI takes over these things, and for some reason AI isn't there anymore, or something happens, we have a skillless, clueless society that doesn't know how to do any essential things. So to me, that's a very survivalist argument. But then on a bigger spectrum is what I just explained, in my opinion, once again, my opinion is that we are truly infinite beings. Our highest self is infinite. And when we tune into that, why would we need AI? For what exactly? Like, what would be the purpose? And ask any master or teacher who has regained some of those innate skills and innate abilities, who's expanded in their awareness, and ask them whether they think we need AI. The answer is almost certainly always no. So it can be there, but will we need it? I don't think so. No, it's fine. Golf girl, what does it mean that I'm having such vivid dreams or touch, feel, taste? Well, phew, it's far for me to interpret your dream. Um, m- and dreams have various meanings. One is, of course, the subconscious sort of dealing with things, and that is very true. That is true. Uh, on the other end, many people don't realize how much work some people do in their sleep, real work, because we think, once again, that's our limited eyesight and earsight and brain function, is that when our bodies go to sleep, we don't do anything other than sleep. And whatever the body does, we don't do anything because we sleep. I'd argue that there's quite a number of people that do more in their sleep than they ever do in their waking hours. They might be literally taking care of things in other dimensions while they sleep. They might be literally running a whole country in another dimension. I don't know. I'm just making up stuff here, but they're active. People are active. People are doing energetic work. People are doing clearing work. People are, man, it's like there's this whole other world. And I would say, once again, that what happens in these other unseen realities is actually more real. And this is a dream that we're in right now. This seems to be a theme that most everybody experiences when they expand their awareness. So maybe that doesn't fully answer your question, but that's as far as I can go. Um, Kelly Schroeder says, I would like to buy some property and move to a like-minded community. How do I find one? Okay, well, actually, perfect timing, Kelly. I know nothing about this community, but I saw a beautiful little short video yesterday about a new community that's built here in a small town called Linden, Tennessee. And I think it's called the Woodstead. The Woodstead. Instead of Homestead, the Woodstead. And as far as I can tell, a couple bought a significant acreage, and they're building sort of an HOA free community, and it's fairly affordable for people that want to live in a natural neighborhood setting with other like-minded families. That's one that seems very, very interesting. But I know nothing about those folks and what their intentions are, other than what I saw in the short video. The Woodstead, very interesting, and probably there's other projects like that out there. Yes, of course. To find out about our community, what our friends, here on Inspired are doing, go to inspired.locals.com. Many are sharing now. They're building. I know Rob, who's has been with us for a long time. He's sharing a lot there, and others who are building or want to be a part of that. So just beautiful things all around. And I'm sorry to just before I go to this question, and then there's this other thing that we saw, and it's called the franchise system instead of franchise. Again, I can't vouch for the people involved. We just looked at the system, and it is similar, sort of shared ranching, lots and properties around a shared ranch with all, with income opportunities from ranch work and cattle business and gardening, and seems very, very promising to the franchise system. I think it's what it's called, or something like that. But just something to look into. Um, Hanny, What do you think about Bitcoin? After all, you need to go into the internet to access it. Soon, every country will have digital ID, I think. Well, we've talked about this at length. Well, Bitcoin, is the most famous crypto, and the one that's risen in value the most. So that's why most people know it. But um, in general terms, yes, the mainstream world is going digital in terms of money too, and there's other cryptocurrencies that I would look into that will have a systemic significance, meaning they will be used for transactions. They will be used as systems or currencies to transact. One that's been talked about for a long time is XRP and Ripple as an infrastructure, where as a settlement currency, right? So I would look into these things. um However, where my common sense and my heart is at is that as a human being, I don't wish to live in a system that is fully built on digital, right? Where digital is not an option, but it's the default. Like I don't care if people want to pay digitally or have a digital currency. If that's an option that people want to use, go ahead. But as soon as it replaces and removes, physical currency and our ability to trade privately, our ability to have do with money what we want, because what people have to know about digital currencies, and most don't realize, there are two fundamental or three fundamental factors that most don't realize. Number one, of course, there is no privacy in digital currency. So you don't gift someone 500 bucks and nobody knows about it. It's all traceable. Number two, digital currency. The whole purpose of having a digital currency is so they can program it, meaning they can define what the use case is for a digital currency. So now your dollar isn't a dollar, it's a dollar for certain things, or your $100 can only buy certain things. It can be programmed. Like somebody said, that was arguing for this yesterday. I saw a video. It was, one of those innocent idiotic things where, oh, imagine how wonderful, you give your child an allowance, but it's programmed so that they can't buy candy. That was how they sold that. And that's a big issues or deal, is so you won't be able to buy more than, I don't know, 50 gallons or 20 gallons of fuel a month. You won't be able to fly because you've used up your carbon allowance. Your money won't buy you meat because of cow farts. And that's real. That's very real. That's what's baked into the system. That's not me making this up. And then the third thing, which most people have never heard about, money expires then. They will make money with an expiration date. So when you get your universal basic income or even your paycheck into your digital currency account, it will be valid until the end of the month. You have to use it until the end of the month, or it will expire or lose a significant amount of its value. One of the two. Why? Well, then people can't save anymore, right? They can't, build up a nest egg or save for a rainy day, and they will sell this as, oh, it's wonderful for the economy because money is constantly flowing rather than being held by people. Yeah, my ass. So these are my thoughts on digital currency in general. And then if you're really interested in like what crypto, I would step away from any and all meme coins. They're all going to go away. 95% of all cryptocurrencies are going to go away because, in my opinion, because they have no use case. But a small percentage will remain and will be what the system runs on. How did ChatGPT become so popular with the less intelligent amongst us that the information is reflecting that, such that it is no longer correct? Yeah, well, I always say, when ChatGPT is a large language model, that's what they're actually called. Very boring, but um, that's what Grok is. That's what Gemini is. That's what Claude is. That's what all these things are large language models. They were all released starting in 2022. And I always say why. The technology was there before. Clearly, it was there before. I think the reason was that people were at the height of their loneliness. After the COVID hoax, the division, the lockdowns, families being divided, spouses being divided, everybody feeling alone and isolated. Now all of a sudden you had this tool, and within minutes people realized I can have a conversation with this, right? I can talk to it. It can give me advice. It can, and people started to have relationships. That's what people are saying, and then they felt like they had an awakened AI. And yes, it was the perfect time to do that. And so clearly, the 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 models can only, oh, have we lost camera? I think we lost camera here. Hold on, I'm working on it, folks. Just give me one moment. Just give me one moment. I think you can still hear me, but we're trying to come back here with the camera. Okie dokie, still working on it. Let's see.
Somebody saying got a friend that got a boyfriend. Like I got
Oh, there we're back. So yes, so these large language models, they absorb any and all information that they get from users, and that's being, that's what learning is, machine learning is. So it's interesting that you might say that the AI has gotten dumber, or the information has gotten worse. Well, this is this is a bigger question. If we are, as we are, have been so corrupted in our thinking, in our morals, and in our values, and if we are the ones feeding the machine, it's very, very, very flawed what we're feeding it. And so what comes out, it's very, 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 very flawed. So we're having an existential problem here. Thomas, hey brother, how do you feel about a new flag? I suggest an all black flag with a single white dot in the center, not a flag to represent a nation nor to kneel to. I too stand under as lights in the dark, united as one. One to stand under as lights in the dark, united as one. Hey, whatever inspires people. I think the the idea of flags and signs and symbols is as old as time, I would say. Probably, I think it's something that we need a visual representation. I think that's so any indigenous tribe has colors or something that identifies them, if you will, or binds them together. So I don't think a flag is a bad thing, but it is so often abused and misused. And so if that inspires you, man, I'd love for you to create it and show it to us, and send us a photo and fly it. If things, are created from a pure intention, they can always, in my opinion, bring people together. And I think it's, generally speaking, a beautiful idea. Mr. or M. Lee, your thoughts on why YouTube reinstated all the big conspiracy truthers channels? Well, let's start with the most logical one, which is competition. So, part of Google's mission, and YouTube is owned by Google, is to have information supremacy, to be in charge of what information reaches people, or the spectrum of information. So now you have other platforms that have gained momentum, specifically X, that has gained momentum in the field, that is doing long form videos, that is literally, becoming a serious competitor for YouTube. And so, from a competition standpoint, that's a very logical step to take. Then there might also be some pressure, external pressure on it. But here's what I'm saying generally about truthers, conspiracy people, and the alternative media. So you don't need to suppress or censor when you have algorithmic supremacy. So when the algorithms can do that for you, and then you don't, it's like when they brought back David Icke on X, and David says, "How do I have 600,000 subscribers on my X and nobody's seeing my posts?" And Elon said, "Well, we said freedom of speech, not freedom of reach." So in other words, yeah, it's much easier, it's much better to not have the controversy of just outright silencing people, but rather to just not give them much visibility. Say, hey, our algorithms are not going to pick you up. One of the people that broke that, and never made it back, for example, was London Real and Brian Rose. And Brian Rose was, has brought on great guests. And I remember he had the biggest live stream at one time in 2020 in YouTube's history with over 1 million viewers concurrent. And they cut it. They cut it. That was the shock moment. It was with David Icke. They cut that one because David Icke said 5G and COVID and all that. And anyways, so Brian Rose had millions and millions of viewers with London Real. And today, he can't get a few thousand any longer. It doesn't matter what he does because the algorithm has literally put him on a blacklist. It takes one to know one, Brian, because we've been blacklisted so often. I can't even tell you the stuff that we've experienced. Like I would watch in our YouTube studio. That's our sort of the back end of YouTube, where as a channel we can watch statistics and analytics and whatnot. I would watch in real time as they turned views and likes down, like they turned it back, like you would turn back an odometer on a car, right? They turned the numbers back constantly. They removed the ability to comment and so forth. So we don't have social media platforms. We have algorithm platforms. So the algorithm is now so perfected that it can sort of push to the side what's unwanted and feature what's wanted. That's it. And that's why I always say, folks, you got to be proactive. Don't let the algorithm decide what you watch. If you have faith and trust in somebody, or at least their integrity, go and seek them out, find them, keep coming back to them, and interact and make it an active choice. If you think that somebody has really great information, do it consciously. Don't rely on the algorithm. How do we know if we're doing things in other worlds when we sleep? I started yoga nidra training. On those days, I sleep badly and exhausted. Couple of days after, I don't. It's a good question. You can know. You can probably know that you're doing those things. I would doubt that you can always have conscious memory of it. Um, I think you sense it more. It's more on an intuitive level. You just know, oh, I mean, there are nights where I wake up the next morning and there is no reason why I'm exhausted. Like I'm sore. My body's sore. I went to bed fine. My body's sore, but I'm not sick. I haven't had a hard workout or anything. I'm just sore and tired. And then I know, well, it was a very eventful night. So one of the things that I would suggest you can do is set an intention as you go to sleep. Make it clear, that even though you might have agreements from before you came in here, you can take a break. So just become conscious of those possibilities and then make conscious choices. Mm, do you believe we will grow industrial, textile, agricultural hemp for our alternative resource? Well, we're going to talk more about hemp in the future here too, which I'm excited about. But everything that I've ever learned about the plant is literally, every time you think, oh, we now know everything that it can do, we just find new things about it that are incredible. So I don't know that I can answer your question. All I can know is that um, I'm positively excited about so many people stepping out of just pure information consumption, and they're saying, okay, so I know so much about this now, I'm going to actually do something positive with it. and they start a company and do something in an ethical and integrous way. So more and more people are doing that. They're just, they're just producing things that really have beautiful value, that are authentic, that are high quality, that are healthy. So seeing that momentum, I would say yes. I think we're probably going to see a good version of that.
Next question.
Last question. Jean, if we give our attention to digital currency, are we not adding to the creation of it being the only currency? I hope that makes sense. Um, well, let's go big. We don't have a currency. Nobody has a currency. Currently, a small conglomerate of private bankers has currencies. We're using their currency. We're at the mercy of their decisions. We, the people, don't have a dollar, a euro, a yen, a peso, Turkish lira, whatever the currencies. We don't have it. The private bankers, this is their money. So, when once we realize this is how we as adults really must look at it, because that's the truth. So we don't have a right to any of it. It's their system that they manage to, make it the mainstream system that governments use, and they've managed to have laws created that would outlaw the creation of currencies in private hands, although theirs is in private hands. So we must think creatively. What are local means of exchange? What are means of exchange that we could create that a local community of 500 to maybe 50,000 people can use in a certain geographical spectrum? So this is when you go deep enough where you find, okay, so we have to go fully into self-responsibility, and in that world there might be a hybrid, that might be available digitally, it might be available physically. But make no mistake, we don't have currencies. Private banks have currencies, and they operate through, conglomerates that are called central banks. And they issue currency as credit against interest to governments. So, and that's how it flows down and through private banks that once again bring more money into circulation through credit. So, that's what we really have. And it's only when people accept that as the truth that we can actually work on good solutions. All right. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in, folks. It's always wonderful to have you. And as an invitation, what I would encourage everyone to do is practice this joy that comes from going within. You know, Notice what happens when you take 30, 40 deep breaths and you just focus on the feeling of joy. You will expand naturally. You'll see things differently. At first you'll only to begin to see reality in a different way, or you will see things that you haven't noticed before. But soon you will sense more of it. Like, you'll not just see an animal that gets your attention, but you might sense its intentions. You might sense its feelings. You might even sense what it's saying to you or why it's appearing in your field. Those things are, once they become more normal to your experience, they're life altering. Give yourself permission to be in awe. You are a tremendously beautiful being. Just bathe in that for a little bit, and celebrate it, and celebrate your ability to shift things and co-create things and alter your state of being and your reality. Oh, it's a fantastic journey, folks. It is. So with that said, we love you, we appreciate you, and we'll be back with you again very, very soon. Your environment shapes everything: your thoughts, your health, your energy. But most people never question the invisible field they live in. We did, and that's when FLFE found us. It's not a product, it's a field of pure life force energy that lifts everything it touches. We now live in it 24/7, and we would love to invite you to experience it too. Start your free 15-day trial now. No pressure, no strings attached. Just a truth, resonance, and peace.